Okay, section 4.4, add and subtract unlike fractions. So unlike fractions would be fractions that have different denominators. In order to add or subtract fractions, we know that we must have denominators that are the same. In order to achieve that, you need to find the least common denominator. So we're going to be looking for the denominator that is the smallest number that all of the denominators can go into. So we're going to start out with just looking at some numbers themselves. So finding the LCD of the following numbers. So pretend that these numbers were our denominators. So we're going to find the least common denominator of these. Our least common denominator is going to be at least as large as our largest number. So 3 is our largest number. We check and see, does 2 go into 3? And we know that it goes in there, but 1.5 times. It doesn't go in there for a whole number or an integer amount. So because we know that the 3 has to go in there and the number has to be at least as large as the largest, we're just going to look at multiples of that largest number. So the next multiple of 3 is 6. So then we ask ourselves, does 2 go into 6? And yes, it does. It goes in there 3 times. So our LCD is equal to 6. Okay, then we're going to look at our next set of numbers, 5, 4, and 12. So once again, we're going to look at this largest number, and we're going to see, what does 4 go into 12? Yes, it does. So any multiple of 12, 4 will also go into. So we don't need to check that one anymore. Does 5 go into 12? No, it doesn't. So we go up to the next multiple. Does 4 go in there? Yeah, it still goes in there. And it will go into any other multiple. Does 5 go in there? No, it doesn't. So then we go up to the next multiple of 12, which is 36. So I'm just going up by 12s here. 5 still doesn't go into 36, so I go up to the next one, which is 48. 5 doesn't go into 48, so the next one is 60. 5 does go into 60. 4 goes into 60, and 12 goes into 60. So the 60 is the LCD. Now between 14 and 35, we can look at that and say, no, 14 does not go into 35. 35 is the largest number, so we're going to take a multiple of that, which is the next one is 70. Does 14 go into 70? Yes, it does, 5 times. So the LCD here is 70. Now, once we get that LCD, we have to do some more steps. So we get the LCD, and then we want to convert each one of the fractions so that it has that as the least common denominator as the new denominator. We can't change the fractions at all, but we can change how the fraction looks. When we do this by multiplying both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So if I wanted to add 1/2 plus 1/3 together, I knew that from 2 and 3, our least common denominator was 6. So I'm going to put that down as the denominator. What do I have to multiply 2 by to get 6? 3. So 1 times 3 is 3. What do I have to multiply 3 by to get to 6? Well, that's 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. Now that I have those same denominators, now I write the denominator down and I add the numerators. And I get the 5, 6. Okay, what happens if I want to add 3/5 plus 1/4 plus 5/12? Okay, we knew that the least common denominator is 60. 5 times what gives you 60? That's 12. So 3 times 12 is 36. What times 4 gives you 60? 15. So 15 times 1 is 15. And we wanted that to be a denominator of 60. And this denominator 60, 12 times what gives me 65? So 5 times 5 is 25. have the same denominator, we can go ahead and add the numerators. I'm going to save that for a minute. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to say, okay, so we converted the fractions. Now we add or subtract the numerators. And like we did in the previous section, and put that over the LCD. So we come up here, what is 35 plus 15 plus 25? Well, I know 25 and 15 is 40. 40 plus 36 is 76. 60s. As if we add those together, we get that number. So we have a mixed number now. Can we reduce it down? Yes, we can. We can reduce that down to 2 goes into both of them. 2 goes into 76. 3, 38 times. 2 still goes into both of those. So 2 goes into 38 19 times, and 2 goes into 30 15 times. So your calculator is going to either give you this answer, or it's going to give you the mixed number of 1 4/15. Either one of those is a correct answer. Now, when you look at these original numbers, 3/5, 1/4, 5/12, how does your calculator come up to 19/15? Well, it's going to automatically do that, or it's going to come up to this 1 4/15. But you need to know how to go through the process to do that, so that you can tell whether or not your answer makes sense. So even though your calculator can do the work, you need to know the process behind it, and how we go from a least common denominator of 60, reduce down to 15 or 30, and then reduce down to 15. That's all things that you should know how to do. What happens if you can't find your least common denominator that much, or you have some larger numbers that you want to find the least common denominator of? Let's look at the number 360 and 420. Okay, right off the bat, we can see that they both end in zeros, so we can take a 10 out of both of them. So 10 and 36. 10 and 42. A 10 can be broken down to 2 and 5. 36 can be broken down to 6 and 6. And then each of those 6s can be broken down to 3 and 2, 3 and 2. And then we have all prime numbers at the end of these trees. You remember the prime factorization tree. So once again, 10 can be broken down to 2 and 5. 42 can be broken down to 7 and 6. 6 can be broken down to 2 and 3. 7's a prime number. 3, 2, 5, 2. Those are all prime numbers. So once you have your numbers in their prime factorization, we are going to write it in terms of powers. So 360 is equal to 2. How many 2's do we have? 1, 2, 3. 2 to the third times, we have 2 3's here, so 3 to the second, and we have 1 5. So that's the prime factorization of 360. The prime factorization of 420. We have 2 2's. We have 1 3. We have a 5. And we have a 7. So now that we have this written this way, our LCD is found by taking the different bases that we have. So we have a base of 2, a base of 3, a base of 5, and a base of 7. So we can write those down. And then we're going to take the largest power of each of those bases, which is in either one of those. So we have a power of 2 and a power of 3. So in our LCD, we're going to take 2 to the third power. We're going to take the largest power. We have a 3 to the first and a 3 squared. So our largest power is squared. We have a 5 to the first and a 5 to the first. So a 5 to the first is the largest power, and we have a 7 to the first. We don't have any 7 here, but if it's in one of the factors, it has to go into our LCD. So our LCD for this number is 2 to the third, which is 8, 3 squared, which is 9, times 5 times 7. So 7 times 5 is 35. 8 times 9 is 72. Grab my calculator here real quick to get what the other numbers are. There we go. So we have 72 times 35. So we have 72 times 35, and we end up getting 2,520 as our LCD. That is the lowest number that both 360 and 420 would go into. Now, if we just took 360 and 420 and multiplied them together, we could get a number that both of those would go into, but it is not the least common denominator. It is a denominator that we could switch them to, but not the least common denominator.